Well, greetings, everyone. I'm Salwa Mikdadi, the founding director of Al-Mawrid Arab Center for the Study of Art at New York University in Abu Dhabi. Al-Mawrid, for those of you who don't know, is an interdisciplinary hub for advancing research on the visual arts from the intellectual home in the Arab world, integrated into a global network of scholars and institutions. Building on its publicly accessible archive of digitized artist paper, the center research interrogates the histories of institutions, exhibitions, education, and social theory that connects practices unique to the Arab world to world historical shifts. Now, from its inception, the center recognized the importance of engaging artists in interrogating the archive through installations, writing, and podcasts, which we would upload on our website. The center now continues to offer opportunities to engage an archive, which inspired today's topic as well. The center's long-term commitment to artists' expression is evident in the contribution of artist Ala Younes, a member of our team, Al-Mawrid team, since its inception. My sincere appreciation to Ala and to all the speakers and discussants, and as I said, a special thank you to Al-Mawrid team who made today's meeting possible, and to New York University Abu Dhabi Research Institute and the Division of Arts and Humanities. So welcome all, and we're gonna hopefully now start on time. We are on time. So and I'll ask our first discussant to take it from here. And thank you all.
Thank you, Salwa. But maybe before we give the mic to Myriam, I would like to just say a few things. I'd like to thank Salwa, all the participants, and our discussants. We are very, very much looking forward to their presentations. I'd like to also thank Archie, Maha, Shahd, and my colleague Maisa, who you can see she's actively filling the chat box with bios. Yes, looking forward. And to you, Myriam.
Thank you, Ala. Building on the thanks, I want to thank Professor Mikdadi and Al-Mawrid's team for this invitation and for being part of this symposium. I'm really looking forward for the panel that I'm chairing. So my name is Myriam. I have a PhD in Sciences of Arts, and I'm currently affiliated with the University of Luxembourg as a postdoctoral researcher working on the intersection of public history and arts, which makes sense more now as to why I'm going to be discussing with the artist on the subject of archives and public history. So our first presenter is going to be Amina Menia. I'm not going to say anything about her bio because it's already been put in the chat, as Ala mentioned. So I'll leave the floor to Amina. Amina, you have around 15 minutes, as we already said, maybe a tiny bit more, so that we also leave some time for the rest of the presenters and also for their questions from the audience. The floor is yours, Amina. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome to all of you. Thank you to Professor Mikdadi and to Ala for organizing the symposium. I'm really very excited and really happy to take part. Thank you to all the members of the team, all the staff of Al-Mawrid. So I will start by just telling you that I feel today, after all those years of investigating archive, I'm like a missed archaeologist and a missed historian. So maybe I will focus on that. How did I'm very bad in 15 minutes, huh? So you have to make alarm. Okay, so archive, the use of archive. Well, when I first started my career, I trained as an architect and designer, and I oriented my career into a sculpture, conceptual artist, and I was supposed to work on the ground in everyday life. I didn't imagine that I will be digging into archive and be sort of an urban archaeologist, because the choice of using the archive was an alternative to many obstacles, to many taboos I was facing. So here's how I turned into archive. And then, because I have a real passion for history, I was moving between art history and history. And then archive became the material, my everyday material, just to work with. I said it's an alternative. It was not like an artistic choice, an artistic stance. It was really alternative to sort of divert from all the obstacles I was facing in the public place, because in my work as an artist, I'm very, very concerned by the public space and how art expresses in the public space, even in a non-direct manner, or through commissions, or through the colonial legacy and everything. So I was very, very, very concerned about all what happens, all that can be expressed in the public space. So leading from that, working with that, the first, let's say, sort of taboo, first obstacle and boundaries were that the public space is very complicated to manage in Algeria. Building from there, I was sort of trying to find an alternative. The alternative was to go to books, to archive. And then I faced the second taboo, which is the fact that most of the archive are still kept in France. They are in French institutions like National Archive and different institutions. They are classified, they are well kept. In the same time, in Algeria, we don't know the amount of archive that are still here and how it is classified, where it is stored and how, because it's very, very complicated always. It's just like, it's not the right moment, it's not the right institution. Do you have the license? Who are you? Who are you? I mean, who are you to work with that? You're not a historian, you're not official. So what is it? What does it mean to be an artist and to work on very sensitive archive? And this is sort of schizophrenic relationship that I had. So I had so many times to travel to French institutions, to loan from there, to go and dig there and be back to my ground, which is Algiers. So this is how it is an alternative. I'll start by sharing some projects. And this is a selection of projects that are really, really based on archive. The first one is chrysanthemums. Well, I have started with different projects on the public space, and then because I couldn't always realize them, I went into digging into archive and try to sort of do sort of a restitution between work on the ground and work on the archive. So you see here, Chrysanthemums, it's a photographic series and installation as well, which is traveling on the north coast of Algiers with hundreds of kilometers and trying to pile in and really compiling the different sorts of foundation stones, memorials, plaques, different size, different forms of memorial buildings that can go from very monumental, important object to a small plaque or to a small stela. And here is the series Chrysanthemums, where you can see here I have pictures, images that I do myself, and then the documentation that is a reference to it. So it's sort of comparing past and actual buildings, and also it is a long ride through history, but also through geography, because I was traveling everywhere in the north where the battleground was. because in each place we had like big battles, or during, the War of Independence, you can find like stones or small commemoration objects, so dotting the landscape. And I was sort of pursuing them and trying to do like territories and in the same time art history and geography. So this was the first series. And the second one is enclosed, which is a documentary-based installation. So I was more and more involved and engaged with archive. So this is enclosed. This is the former Monument to the Dead of the First World War, inaugurated, as I said, in 1928. And in 1978, it has been, and since there it is the situation, it has been encased in a cement coffering. So this is Paul Landowski, the sculptor who made this monument. And then we have Mohamed Isiakham in front of the monument in 1978, trying to avoid dismantling or destroying this very big and monumental object. So he tried to encase it and to hide it into this cement coffering, and maybe trying to save it and trying to say, you can open it wherever you want. And this is a full documentary-based installation. You can see here the vitrines that I had from the Museum of the 30s and the Museum of Paul Landowski. A big amount of archive, from drawings to photographies to postcards and in this project I really made sort of a mise en scène, in mise en abîme, and I really staged all the work, all the investigation process. So you can go from one vitrine to another, and you can piece together all the fragments that I was gathering into my project. So this is a sort of culminating point where I stage the research process. In the third project that you see, it is like a sort of a 10-year loop of research on the monuments. You can see here Monument in Exile, an infinite page of marble writing, where here all the investigation and urban archaeology has been kept aside. And what you see is like, this one is like very white, very white, small renderings of monuments that are left today in our space, in our urban landscape. And all the tops of the monuments has been dismantled and took to France. So every day we have like half of these monuments living between Algeria and France. The other half in France has been grafted and put into another project with another narrative. Whereas today in Algeria, we have this truncated with beheaded monuments that are telling, of course, another story and leaving another blank. So here is sort of the ghost of the ancient sculpture that is in top of these pedestals. So this time, all the investigation process is not shown. I was privileging, prioritizing another way to show all this research. In other projects, like those two films that I have, there is another way to deal with archive. In this film, in this first film, that has been made in Marseille, in the south of France, it is sort of mirroring Algiers and Marseille into a very complex relationship between, the two sister cities. We call them sister cities because there is this architect, Fernand Pouillon, has been building rebuilding the face of Marseille after the Second World War, and has been a key actor in facing the new Algiers, the new modern, let's say, Algiers in early 50s. So those two, I will share the video. So in this film, it's a mix between archival images that I got from INA in France and from different sources, and my own work, which is a very long interviews with Rachid Makhloufi and a very big journalist, who is Slimane Zguidour, Algerian journalist based in France. So it is, and also, the video that is in the middle, it is my own work in colors. The others are in black and white, and these ones are in color, colored image. This is my own editing of like recent archive, more close to our contemporary era. So it is a reflection about how football is taking the public space and how football is in a sort of escape. There is sort of a narrative, there is and a sort of group therapy that is expressed through football. There is a void in the other areas of the society. So it's a mix between history, between football and politics. So this is National Liberation Football. And for the other projects that I said, it was everything from one project to another. I sort of interrogate my methodology, which is not existing because I was improvising from one project to another, from one topic to another. And I didn't have like a very clear way to deal with those archives because each time it was a different source with different boundaries, with different output at the end. Because I love the way that if archive permits to have a narration in drawers, or in draws, in layers, and I didn't know at the end that for football liberation, national liberation football, it will be a film. I had this amount of research, and then I said, how can I transcend it, and how can I make it visible? At the end, it was so different sources and so many layers that I had to choose to show it in a film. And there is another, just very quickly because
I don't want to be the bad guy, but we're running out of time.
Yeah, I know. So let's go back to just like showing you. I told you that I was voila, the very last project. I don't know if you see it. Okay, so let's go to the camera. Maybe it will be easier this way. Just to show you the last project, which is, do you see this review? Okay. I felt that now I'm more into, I wanted to go to projects that are not really so talkative in terms of information and archive, and go to more like white forms, abstract forms. And then all the research will be sort of infiltrating other spaces. Like here you see it's a feminist review that we edit in Algeria, published in Algeria. And last year I was commissioned to do a work. So here is how I infiltrated this work. And this is still a work on the names of the streets in Algeria. And you see it's a paperwork with life-size plaques of the names of the streets, French colonial names that are erased today, and with the new names. So this is sort of how now I deal with archive. I sort of try to show them in another space, and in the artworks show something else. Just like a very quick word for the historians, because I was dealing with history with a very, very big capital H. So this is why I feel like now I'm sort of a failed or a missed archaeologist and a mixed historian. A lot of historians became friends because all the specialists that are between Algeria and France, French, American, Algerian are historians. And I say hello and I say thank you because they were providing me with information and critiques and everything. I have to say thank you. I'm running out of time, I think. Okay, I'm open for questions, of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amina. And I am really sorry for being this person in the conversation, but we need to make time for the questions because I'm sure after these presentations, everybody's going to have something to follow up on. So you'll be able to elaborate more maybe once the questions are here. Thank you so much, Amina, for the presentation. So now we're moving forward to Cristiana de Marchi. If I'm pronouncing the name wrongly, please correct me. As we said, the bio of Cristiana is going to be put in the chat, and I'll leave the floor to you, Cristiana. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, first of all, Salwa and Ala, for inviting me to be part of this symposium. And since time is limited, I will start by sharing my screen. So since time is limited, I've selected a few projects to present and illustrate my research focusing on archives of sort. And ultimately focusing on accessibility of the very contents preserved by those archives. And I defined, the definition of archives of sort comes from the very nature of these archives, because they are often expansive aggregations of more or less coherent materials, and including human rights repositories, legal text, and discarded litter. These long-term projects share a same strategy, that is a conscious conceptual misunderstanding in their premises, in the very way that the works are offered to the audience, to the viewer. So the first series is titled Black. Each project has a subtitle because all of them, they are based on legal text. This one specifically is the International Criminal Court. And you see here a detail. So from far, the appearance is almost null. But then when you get close to the work, you can see what's happening there. So basically, the articles are translated into English Braille and then reproduced in a monochrome black on multiple black canvases. Each one of them has a number in Roman numbers to emphasize the connection to the legal frame. And as the very nature of Braille implies the use of touch to read the text, an action that is usually negated within an art assembly or an art exhibition, I point at the core question of accessibility, or rather inaccessibility of those rights. Stripping away the linguistic impact of the articles, a kind of mute censorship is enacted. The process of transformation calls into question the concept of universality. So questioning if such principles can be understood and shared by all. And as the linguistic power of each is challenged, issues of viability are raised. Although existing and inscribed, those rights are not adhered to. Hence, the declarations are consigned to a collective blind spot. This one is the Aarhus Convention. The Aarhus Convention is a convention on the right of the citizenship to be involved in any kind of decision that governments take about environmental issues, since they have a huge impact on everyone's life. And obviously, it's widely disregarded. And this one is the Convention on the Status of Refugee, which also states all the rights that refugees in principle should enjoy, while obviously, as we see, this is again not applied. Using a coded form that is incomprehensible to most, Black highlights that its existence as a formal legal statement, in fact, conceals the reality it is meant to describe and shape. The question of the voice, which is an inherent component of a repository, is here crucial, as reading Braille obviously is a tactile experience rather than a verbal or visual one, and vocalization is less often associated to its progress and acquisition of information. So voice is held, intimately resonating, resounding, and yet the process of transformation from one language to another investigates the relation between tactility and orality, whose preservation is a main preoccupation of several archives. The second series is the series that I titled Commemorative Stamps. And here again, all these projects about archives are long-term projects. So the Black started in 2013 when I first worked on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it's an ongoing series. Same for this one, which started a bit later in 2018. The commemorative archive stamps consist in the creation of stamps out of either litter and found objects or appropriated images from the net. Reflecting on the subjects of representation reproduced on stamps, the series reverts notions of celebration and national pride and addresses mundane, equivocal, and even shameful elements pertaining to specific societies and mostly hidden. The stamp itself cannot grant free circulation to the letter on which it is glued, as it is not emitted by an authorized government or agent, and this reflects a sense of frustration for the individual inability to affect major political decisions or even to be heard. At the same time, this whole process of creating fake stamps, one of the identity-defining instruments empowered by nations, creates a space for freedom, where the transformation of mundane and dismissed objects into stamps authenticates, validates, and empowers the dimension of an otherwise inaudible citizenship. The one I'm showing here is titled Environmental Justice and consists, you can see here, so I basically created appropriated images of environmental catastrophes that occurred between 1992, which is the year of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and 2019, when the work was realized. And then I created this fictional correspondence where addressing environmental agencies and ministries of 50 countries in the world. This is another presentation of the same work. So clearly, the whole idea here is that those stamps, although they fictionalize a very specific situation, can never go beyond the fictional. So they stay within a sphere of suspension. And so is the communication between, let's say, the population or the people, as so to speak, and governmental entities which are supposed to represent them. Another set of work is the embroideries on newspapers. This one also is a series that I started in 2011-12. And those basically conjugate different levels of language. So it can be media and legal language, literature and media, pop music and media, to activate a certain awareness of the rhetorical use of language, which eventually nullifies its power and strength, while looking at situations where, once again, issues of access to the rights virtually granted by law is arduous and even negated. The one I'm showing here in a very bad reproduction, I'm sorry for that, is titled Nosotros el Pueblo, and was realized in 2012. Obviously, Nosotros el Pueblo is the translation of We the People. And that was the whole idea. I mean, the work was created during a residency in the US where well, let's say a lot of messages are conveyed both in English and Spanish for the Spanish-speaking community. But then my question was about the substantial, let's say, text, including the Constitution. And so I engaged with this translation of the preamble to the US Constitution, which was signed in 1787 and ratified the next year, which declares basically who is enacting the Constitution, that is the people of the United States. So the document is the collective, as we all know, the collective enactment of all US citizens. The Constitution is owned, so to speak, by the people, not by the government or any branch thereof. So we, the people, are the stewards of the US Constitution and remain ultimately responsible for its continued existence and faithful interpretation. While translating the preamble into Spanish language, the work addresses once again issues of full accessibility to constitutional rights for the Spanish community living in the US, as well as the very essence of the notion of community, the we, which is at the core of the collective ownership of the Constitution. And so all these works are embroidered. It's a hand embroidery on the newspaper themselves. This is another project which is titled the Nausicaa's Song, really it's a work that I realized in 2019 and utilizes a line from the Odyssey where Ulysses is welcomed and finally finds a way back home. And of course, I have like overlapped with newspapers from that same year when there was like a major migration crisis, and the response of the Italian government was disappointing, to say the least. So the superposition of the text over images of migrants' rescue in the Mediterranean Sea invokes questions of human rights, but also at a more essential and substantial level of human dignity, a question that cannot be simply deferred to the institutions representing us at a state level. Yeah, so this is the way it looks like as a whole presentation. The last work that I'm presenting is a recent work, the series of knitted audio tapes that I titled An Archive of Silence, and this project started in autumn 2023 and currently ongoing. The work conjugates the different levels of voice recording. So these are knitted audio tapes. So the audio tapes are first of all recorded, but the voice remains inaudible as they are then functionally transposed and become the very material for a textile piece, thus being deprived of their original function. The voice that was recorded, hence supposed to be documented, is here recoded, silenced, and instrumentalized to support the creation of a silent sonic fabric. The transition from text to textile, from sound to silence, addresses issues of, again, effective communication, audibility of the civic community, which is more often regretfully negated. And finally, I would like to mention, of course, with gratitude, the occasion that allowed me to become deeply involved with the Al-Mawrid archive. So in the spring of 2023, I was invited by Professor Salwa Mikdadi to be a recipient of a fellowship and to engage with the archive from an artistic perspective, which was a completely free kind of response. So I eventually turned towards writing and ended up with an essay that included and combines archival documents, transcripts, commentaries, visual reproductions, sketches, autobiographic and diaristic sections. So I will just read a few lines from the text that this essay, and I quote: "I'm explaining to a friend who tries to understand the nature of this archive and what I'm doing here. This happens over a Moroccan tea served with grace, that the archive preserves the paraphernalia of an artist's practice. The documents, the sketches, the journals, notebooks, postcards, and letters, personal photos, as well as published catalogs and paper clippings. Everything but the artworks. Everything witnessing the daily exposure to the artistic practice, the very surroundings of being an artist. A void is left intentionally unexplored, the actual core for most art historians, who typically focus on the outcome of an artistic practice rather than on the process behind it. Is the archive always a testimony of life? This one seems to be rather favoring life over creation. But in that configuration, then, I see my obsession for absence satisfied. The archive I'm exploring is structured around the absence of the artworks represented in their legibility, represented in their realism. I'm walking along the periphery of creation. That's why walking in circles seems so appropriate. I'm not even trying to recreate a clear path followed by a specific artist at a defined moment of their trajectory. I'm flirting with the traces of their understanding of being an artist, and often simply of being a human being. Driven by my interest in absence and void, my entry points to the archive follow the same key. And this archive is peculiar in its focus on the conditions that surround art making and its apparent disinterest towards the very result of that same creative process. So I'm just going to read one more short text, which is the response of the archive to my search on transient and ephemeral. And I quote again, "The archive doesn't respond to these entries. Nothing transient, nothing ephemeral seems to be contained in this repository. Of course, an archive is the opposite of a transient, ephemeral reality. It is its negation, the conscious attempt to win against transience and ephemerality, the purpose of an archive being preservation, the propagation of past documents into the future, their safe trajectory from a potential loss into a secure conservation. And yet, ephemeral are in most cases the very documents that make it into the archive. The photographs printed in now vanishing colors, the handwritten in fading inks and pencils, letters, postcards, and journals, the yellowish paper clippings. While searching ephemeral, the whole archive should proclaim its existence, should claim its right to escape impermanence, to evade evanescence and reclaim their intention to resist. Can an archive be seen as an act of resistance, a counterposition, simply as it defies the natural tendency to decay, to deteriorate, to fade? Can an archive symbolize our human ambition to immortality? Can an archive eventually phagocytize itself and turn its components into a new growing body? Is immortality the simple preservation of something then being, now glorified to the point of becoming crystallized? Or is it rather the process of growing new gems, new branches, new leaves and flowers, so to speak, adopting the naturalistic metaphor to better envision the continuity of life from an old body, although revered? What is the distinction between immortality and legacy? Thank you.
Thank you, Cristiana, so much for this presentation. So as we said, if you have questions already from the audience, please put them in the chat. We're going to move forward to the third, last but not least, artist presenting today, Bady Dalloul. I feel like we're cousins in a past life, Dalal, Dalloul, there might be something in there. Bady, looking forward to hearing what you have to say about your work and to your presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Myriam. I hope you're hearing me well. I would like to thank Professor Mikdadi and also Ala Younes for allowing me to be present today. I'll try to convey a sense and meanings to my practice in a language that is far from mine, English. I was born in Paris of Syrian parents, and it's not an easy language for me. I will share a few images through this document now. Here, I think. Let me know if it works. Does it work? Yes. Okay, great. And I will start. I started my practice actually as a game with my little brother, Jahad, and me. We were teenage at the time, a bit older than this, around like 10, 11. And we started writing and collaging and drawing in diaries that were belonging to my grandfather. When we were spending these long summers in Damascus, Syria. and everything around us at the time was a pretext to reinterpretation, reimagination. In these notebooks, Jad, my brother, had a country which he ruled. It was Jadland. And me, as I didn't know English, my country was Badland. And we wrote inside these notebooks nearly every day, spending hours collecting material that we would sometimes understand partially, and sometimes not understand at all. This practice continued over the years of my teenage, mimicking sometimes history and geography books that we had in school in Paris, but also other materials such as the program. You have here a part of the program written a simple piece of paper, but also list of military equipment or completely fictitious maps where a border would make countries that were neither ideal nor perfect, but just a reflection of our little understanding at the time. And so in this, we would, of course, collect images of wild, white old man, and that we would consider as our ministers for our fictional countries, and mimic graphs that would also go backwards. I wonder how this could even occur our mind to just justify what we were writing, what we were imagining, and give even more proof to the collage and the holes we were making in the magazines that we were using. And so from this game, I later entered the Beaux-Arts school in Paris. It was like 10 or 15 years later, at least. And I just continued to do the same thing, questioning belongings to countries somehow, and to how, and questioning also the meaning of borders, like in this stills of this video that I named Discussion Between Gentlemen. It is mimicking a discussion that took place in the 20s on how the agreements between Mr. Sykes, representing a British side, and Mr. Picot, representing a French side, divided this region into the contemporary states that we know today. And so in this video that I did in 2015, you have a couple of 4 pair of hands drawing border and erasing them, and drawing them again geometrically, not geometrically, in a very random way, like a drawing exercise, and until the maps completely dissolves itself, in fact. And so it makes us somehow, it makes me question if the country has a geometrical border, does it mean that we are also geometrical people? I wonder. This same type of question continued in another shape, but not very different from the notebooks that I was doing in my childhood. Here you see one of the pages of the scrapbook that I did also in 2015, made of I found a scrapbook and on that features origami, in which I inserted my personal story. In this, it was my second trip to Japan, this country has over the years, I spent a lot of time there. I started exhibiting there for, it's been now 10 years. And I eventually lived there for 3 years. But at the time, in 2015, it was my second trip. And I ran across the story of this schoolgirl that you see here, Sadako Sasaki, that's her name, which was told a legend after the bombing of Hiroshima, her hometown, that if she does 1,000 origami, she could heal from the radiation that she was suffering from. So this legend is quite known in Japan. But what interested me here was this practice of the more you spend time on focusing on folding origami or on writing or on something else, in fact, than what you're suffering from, you make a wish, and this wish turns to be true, happens to be true. And in this book, I imagined that what if we found, I found the origami of this schoolgirl and turned them into a reality. What she would see if she was alive today. It became a kind of playground where the contemporary histories of Japan and the countries of the Near East, mostly Syria, takes place and develop in mirror to each other. So you see here the fall of the Ottoman Empire on these two double pages, and then on these double pages as well, you see the formation of the British and the French mandate in the Near East with the creation of these contemporary countries that you all know. Here the creation of but also parallels in history where you see, for instance, in 1945, the signing of the surrender of Japan to the American troops, and the very same signing by an Egyptian officer in 1948 with the state of Israel. So there are some parallels that I make, but of course, while keeping the specificities of the two contemporary histories. So writing, collaging, and adding personal material to found media is something that really interests me and creates inspiring questions for me. Following this, I will also share with you this collage and drawing books that I have named Ordinator. It is actually the name of the producer of this accountant book originally, which was blank, that I filled over the pages with the materials of diverse origins. So I mixed and matched materials of Japanese old prints with my own drawings, but also other materials that have been printed in the Middle East and also Europe. Here are the creation on this double page of the seasons and the hours in a very mythical way. Overall, this book follows the creation of the word in a similar way than the antique epics did. You think about the Iliades or the Book of Kings with the Persians that follow this same pattern with mixing mythology with current history, and this quite I think for a contemporary viewer, quite remarkable way of mixing these two, create these oddities where you see the former king of Iraq, Faisal, and his uncle here taking part as nearly actors in this complete fiction, and where actual stamps cohabits with material that have been reappropriated. I don't know how much time do I have left, but please let me know if I am spreading.
You still have a few minutes.
Okay, thank you. Famous figures go in and out of the story, like here Otis Redding features on one of the pages, but also contemporary history of Syria comes with a very unusual twist, where it may remind us of other battles that happened in more medieval times here. Again, you have a mix and match of historical characters taking place. This book is also completed as an installation of several videos. Here you see several characters. Each one of them starts as a fiction, but also blends elements of history in it. You can see George Price, the first Prime Minister of Belize here, but also a Nepalese prince here, the Dipendra, or Cox, who was one of the person present at the foundation of Iraq in the 1920s, and so on. My practice does not always involve featuring historical artifacts or featuring history, but also sometimes personal histories. Here, for instance, these are works that I have exhibited recently at the Mori Museum a few months ago in Tokyo, where I featured the life of my close friends there. Najib, my friend on the right here, becomes a new Astro Boy, a famous figure in Japanese comics, in the eyes of his children. And on the left, you have Khaldoun, who has been living there as well for more than 30 years, deserve like somehow a cover, in my eyes at least, deserves a cover that makes him an Arabian champion. So I try to mix and match things together. In here, it's a collage book that was also exhibited at the time. That is named Dislocation. I'm mixing references of Japanese advertising, old movies of Japanese, but also Western and also Arabic and Urdu into the contemporary life of Tokyo. Here, for instance, the use of archives are more in reference to the tales of Kalila Wadibna, and these were exhibited at the Louvre, Abu Dhabi last year, where I drew following the same composition of historical Kalila Wadibna. For instance, on the left page, at the beginning, when this tale was commissioned by a Persian king, no, it was a Turkish king, sorry. Here, on this version, the main character was not a barman, but in fact a ruler, and nearby the barman now are his customers and his staff listening to his story. So I kept the same composition visually, but I did with it something that was more personal, more something of my daily life that I have seen. But also sometimes I keep it as you can see on the right page, with the two foxes looking at each other. And that's the story itself is rewritten, but also keeping the same pattern, the same structure, syntax somehow, but with new contents inside. And for the last project that I will share with you, my Matchbox drawings. So these are now a collection of nearly 700 matchboxes. They are made of, I mean, I started them in 2016, and I'm still continuing them as a daily practice. At the beginning as a way to cope with the huge amount of images that were coming out of Syria at the time, and that I didn't, that was affecting me, affecting my close one, and that I didn't know what to do with it. So I started drawing, as I have always collected stamps, and I even drawn stamps in my childhood. I continue to draw in the similar format, based on the images and on the stories that I was seeing. Sometimes as well, I was reinterpreting them, and sometimes it was imagination, and sometimes it was just nearly the same picture, but drawn in my way. As you can see here, it's also a juxtaposition. It works as well as a kind of editing, like in a film. On the matchbox on the left is the last Syrian to go to space. It was in the 1980s. He went into space with a Soviet mission. In the center, you see the very same Syrian astronaut now living as a refugee in Turkey. And on the right matchbox, you see the Mars probe that was recently released with success by the UAE 2 years ago. So these are somehow some compositions of elements and meanings that I try to set together for the viewers. So small groups of images that I feel fitting together. I think I am done. Thank you so much for your listening.
Thank you, Bady. Thank you. So now to the Q&A. Ala, I'm not sure, are we putting the questions in the chat, or do we also have the chance to ask them ourselves? Like if people raise their hand or put their mics on, are they allowed to?
Yes, please ask. Please start your Q&A. Please ask the questions you have, and then I am also inviting with you now the attendees to write their questions in the Q&A. And yes, and we will be reading them or taking them from the audience. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. And maybe to get the ball rolling, I'll start because I took a lot of notes on each of your presentation, and it's really like it's fascinating because there's a part I think that links between the artist wanting to be personal, individual, wanting to be someone who digs in the archives and brings it back to the people. And there's also this part of how much of it is public. How do we explain it to the people who are accessing our work visually? How much of it is accessible, and like how much of it needs more explanation? So maybe I start with Amina. Amina, how do you choose the medium? Like, because you're also like, you have a lot of work that goes either in photography, in video, you have other works in visual. How do you base yourself in the medium when you're working on a certain subject or a topic?
Most of the time in the beginning of the process, I don't know the final shape of it, what it will be. Yeah? I try from one project to another always to interrogate my own process of creation, and so that not to repeat myself maybe, or having a continuation, a real continuity, like a line of force that leads from one project to another. And very rarely I know from the beginning that it will end up being a photography. because at the end of the research, as I said, I have my amount of archive, I have my thoughts, I have everything gathered, and then I transcend them. So at the final, let's say in the end, I have the final aspect of it. So I know it will be this, it will be like an open arms installation. I always love to give more and more space to the viewer, to the visitor, so that he can come inside, gather all the fragments, make his own story, because most of the time there is a lot of information, because as I said, I dig into archives, so that I dig into the history and politics of my country. There is a very big also sort of axis between Algeria and France that is very visible in the latest projects, like in the football film and some other projects. So there is a lot of information, but also there is another poetical part of it, which is my part, my input. So I try to balance between both. Sometimes it's more poetic, sometimes it's more informational. But what I want to do is always have sort of a fragmented and telling stories by fragments, so that the viewer can gather all those things. He can also complete by going and searching something or involving himself into maybe just like gathering more info. But at least I don't want to sort of deluge him with a lot of information. I want to give space also for his own fiction, maybe. Yeah. So at the beginning, I don't really know what is the medium, what is the final aspect, what is the outcome. It's always like trying to find a balance.
Thank you. And maybe also building on that, like, because you mentioned at some point in your presentation how to be able to access the archives, most of the materials are stored in France and in French institutions. And then this also comes with its own battles of how much can I access and how do I get access to such archives? Do you also reflect sometimes on your own work and where it will end up? Like, is it going to be in a public institution or a private collection in France, or is it going to be in Algeria? The archiving of your own work and not you digging the archives.
Yeah, my own work is sort of it navigates between, you know, history and politics, and now I can make sort of a step back and see that most of the time I was searching, I was exploring the fact that time is passing. So I was trying to, this was a battle with time. Time is passing, and also it is a battle about or trying to resist the erasement. Most of the projects that I see, I think to myself, oh my God, I'm just like trying to avoid the erasement of, as I told you, the names of the street erased. I try to focus on them. There is something that is happening. I try to focus that. I try to resist this sort of erasement, and sort of, I try to conserve and to protect the community and the collective memory. So I navigate all those things. And of course, I ask myself where this work will end. Is it an archive in itself at some point? Because yeah, it's a long-term project, and then after me, what it will be, and these artworks will be acquired in a private. Actually, I have only one work in a private collection. All the rest is in public institutions, and zero work in public institution in Algeria so far. So you can, as paradoxical as it may seem, I think that it reflects also on all the long road. It is mirroring also the process and the long road that is made to make the work. So at the end, maybe it will not be kept in Algerian institutions, it will be kept elsewhere. And I hope it will keep the ball rolling, let's say. I trust the future, so that all these things will come back in a boomerang effect in another way.
Thank you. Hopefully, yes. And like this is always a question, and I think it's more so a question of artists who are trying to decolonize the archives, we sometimes notice how certain colonial structures or previous colonial structures are still very much more interested in arts and culture than our own home countries. And then you're like, how do I navigate this? How do I make my work accessible and critical? But also at the same time, if I don't have the means to fund it or show it, where does this work go and where will it end up? So yeah, thank you for the answer. Do we have questions? I think we do. So a question for Bady from Jasmine. I'm gonna read it. Do you treat your own collection of works as an archive? That is, do you catalog or index the matchboxes and scrapbooks? And how do you envisage people interacting with your work in the future outside of public, so in-person exhibits? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. In fact, I just see it as an obsession. It's something that I can't stop doing, collecting stuff, and then writing on it and collaging it, coloring it. So I think if I think about it as not just a personal obsession, but something that I would like to share with the audience, with people who are interacting with me, yes, of course, I would like to make them more visible in a certain way. And this is where the way of thinking about it as an installation enters, of my practice of doing film sometimes enters, and then discuss with my other medium. So I think, yeah, am I answering your question?
Jasmine, if this is not the answer you were expecting, or if you need to follow up with another question, please feel free to do so. I think I have a question for Cristiana, and this might be like the core of what makes an artist and a historian a historian. There's this tension in your work between how do I use and what do I make of the archive? When I saw the piece with the audio tapes that you made the knitting out of, I was like, if there's a historian watching us, they're gonna cry, because you're using the audio material, but in your own way, and practically not paying attention to the fact that these are audio records of something. So how do you reflect on your practice, and how much of it stays true to the history? How much of it is an interpretation, an artistic interpretation of your own vision of it?
Well, that work specifically is a provocation in itself, obviously. I mean, I totally agree that a historian would like have really a hard time to accept a work like that. But it's a fact, like a real question on the function of archives, and also of a growing interest into archives among like many categories of creatives and not only. I mean, to be as a disclaimer, obviously those tapes are recorded with text that I write and then I record. So basically, these are it's also like a questioning on censorship and self-censorship. So it is a whole question around what can be said, what can be preserved, what is the function of these archives in the end, if the same archives, I mean, I've been trained as an archaeologist, and I remember like working inside the archives, and I mean, whatever is in any museum, as we all know, is like a minimal percentage of what's in the archive, but that, I mean, very rarely gets seen or even like researched and studied properly. So it's really like a question around the very essence and meaning of an archive. So as I said, those tapes are recorded with text that I wrote and then recorded myself, and then intentionally like repurposed in a way that basically renders them useless from an archival perspective, but it also reflects on a huge frustration for the many things that cannot be said publicly. So the work is public, the words are there, eventually, but they are not readable. So there is, again, that kind of short circuit between the various layers of communication.
Thank you, Cristiana. There is a question from Manal. I'm going to read it. Would like your thoughts on the various works at the current Sharjah Art Biennial, who has featured many artists who have used archival material central to their work and interventions. I think this is a question to all of you. Feel free to take the lead in answering. Thank you, Manal, for the question. So maybe let's start with, has anyone seen the works that Manal is talking about?
I didn't, so I don't know. No.
I visited the biennial. I didn't see everything, obviously. I mean, there are different strategies of dealing with archives, and most of the works which are in the biennial, I would say they are displayed in the biennial, are dealing with archives from a documentaristic perspective. So a lot of archival material is offered, which is not what I would typically do with those same materials. So there is always like a process of filtering and almost like digesting the materials and then proposing them under a different shape or format. So I mean, it's it's a different kind of approach from what I do, and I would say from what I've seen from both Amina and Bady today as well, where this process of fictionalizing is quite a relevant lens to attempting to rewrite history, or at least approaching history from a perspective which is not the one which has been given so far.
Thank you, Cristiana. Bady, do you want to add something on that? Have you seen the works in Sharjah? I feel like Manal has seen them and wants to comment. If you want to put the comment also in the chat, this might be a way for us to continue the conversation also on that subject. I have a question. I don't know if anyone felt curious to know, Bady, your brother, what did he end up majoring in? What is he doing in life? Jad Land. What is Jad doing?
Jad is a 3D designer and a UX designer.
Perfect.
He would be very happy to hear from you today.
It makes perfect sense. Like, this is the game that you guys started as kids. I was looking at the scrapbooks and I'm like, who does that? Who goes to this level of detail? This looks amazing. It's like and with the graphs and I'm like, when I was 10, I didn't do this. I did like very lame games. It didn't come to this perfection, but kudos.
Thank you.
Also on that part, like you said, you started your practice as a sort of a game, as a kid, something you do in private. And we see this intimate practice in your work, like everything is so small in scale, much like journaling. You work on something that's like, it's really individual. How did you, or when did you come to the point where you felt like this is not only concerning me, this is more of a collective question, let's put this interpretation up for the public? When did you decide to take it out of the Bady playing his own games to Bady playing his own games with the people?
It's a very long question. Thank you for asking. But indeed, I mean, there are several elements. One of them is, I think, time. Especially as my parents are artists, and so growing up in a family of artists, it was also thinking about what do I have to say in this? What can I add to this? So it's am I legitimate to talk about it in this way, and the subjects that you carry as well. So when I found out these. And adding these to just a practice that I kept doing without even thinking, which is, you know, archiving and collecting material. The answer became clearer over time. Now, relating to the size, it was as natural as this. I have this desk. It's not bigger than my body. I have this body, which is 176 centimeter. And this is my scale. So that's when I started imagining things. If I do something bigger one day, I think I will still think about my own size and the human size, in fact, in general, for me, at least. Yes.
Thank you, Bady. Manal came back to us with a comment. So she says, thank you. There were many works based on historical documents and through oral history, for instance, indigenous communities in New Zealand. This use of material is very powerful in bringing to the front sociopolitical issues, where archival material is used to elicit empathy and understanding of complex issues. I would highly recommend visiting the biennial, as it is a great way to see archives used to connect contemporary cultural and community, or contemporarity, culture, and community. Thank you so much, Manal, for the comment. I'm so glad I asked you to elaborate on this. This is beautifully said and well put. Thank you. Ala.
Thank you very much, everyone. I very much enjoyed the presentations, although I know your works, and I've seen Bady, he's trying to say something, so maybe I give him the floor. But I wanted from you, Myriam, also to just give us a little bit of elaboration on the concept of public history and how do you read these works of these artists in relationship to this genre or this like science that's called public history. But maybe we give Bady first a chance because he was trying to say something. Thank you.
Sorry, I'd be very brief. In fact, for Sharjah, the Sharjah Biennale, what I found fascinating was that this formidable platform allowed also to think about who is the audience, the question of audience. If we were showing the same works, let's say in Europe or in the United States, it would be a different thing than showing it here as well. So for me, it was the first question that aroused that came to me was inviting these eminent curators to show these works and they were coming from different contexts. Showing them here makes it very special and questions this. That this is all I have to say.
Thank you, Bady. Maybe it's also perfect to continue on what you just said in terms of what public are we showing our work to. So to answer your question, Ala, public history is a practice that makes history more public. How do we do so? We work on historical narratives with the different communities, voices, and groups that were not represented in the official narrative of history. So we dig in the archives, we see who was left behind, who was silenced, who was not represented, and then we work with these people to make their history heard. There's another part of public history that is how to show it to the public. And this is where arts is usually most handy in making our work accessible. So say we do a research on a historical topic, we come up with books and publications and you name it, everything that the academics like. And then we're like, okay, how do I make this accessible to the public, to the larger audiences, to different social classes, to people who speak different languages, to people who are not familiar with the academic jargon? And we use arts as a medium itself to present this work. But there's a very big conflict between public history practitioners who use arts and artists themselves when we work with historical materials, because for the public historian, we need to be true to the historical narrative, and we need to be accurate. There's no room for fictionalizing. We lose the point of doing our research accessible once we start seeing things in a more interpretive, fictional way. And this is a big discussion between artists, archivists, who have been since the 90s creating fictional archives or using the actual archives to create fictional narratives, and between our work. But I think this is also a very healthy discussion between both mediums. Like we don't have to be okay on the same terms. There's always going to be a practice where public historians are working with history to make it accessible as is to people. And there's also the part where the artist needs to speak for their own experience and from their own perspective and use their imagination to shift history all over. This is simply put.
Can I add something?
Sure, Amina, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that artists are bridging those disciplines, because most of the time the artist allows himself to sort of emancipate from these academic jargon, academic conditions, scientific rules, and it's more interesting because they speak to a larger audience, because they speak to the emotions. So we're not, let's say we're not in the same category, we're not addressing the same people, let's say, but at the end we are bridging those disciplines, and we can open up more and make them more accessible, because we speak to the brain and we speak to the emotions, and so we speak to more collectives. And also in my mind, it's not interesting to deal with the archive in itself as material. We need to add our own layer and to reinterpret them, and to critique them, to critique this material, whereas the historians do not critique. They are just like putting the facts and sort of being very they critique maybe in another level, but when they gather the information, they want to be very sure of the sources, to make sure everything is put in the good way. They're critiquing maybe the domination and the narrative, other things, but the artists most of the time do deal with different backgrounds and different mediums, and as I said, they emancipate themselves from this very academic canvas. They're not interesting for the large audience. So thank God they are artists.
True. And I think it also comes to, where do we present our work? Do we present it in a museum space, which then becomes more exclusive? Do we present it in a gallery space, in a biennial, or do we go to the street, or do we do a performance, or do we do street art? Like, art is so diverse that it has a space to hold all of our interpretations, be it historically accurate or more on the fictional side. I think we have reached the time. We did. Okay.
Thank you very, very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Already?
Thank you very much, Myriam, Amina, Cristiana, and Bady. This was very inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was too
Shukran.
short.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you
Shukran.
very much.
Thank you.